Hey everyone, and welcome to Historical Fails, the dumbest mistakes that changed the world. You know, sometimes when we think about history, we imagine these grand narratives, these sweeping epics of triumph and tragedy. But history, like life, is also full of moments where things go hilariously, ridiculously, unbelievably wrong. We're talking about the kind of mistakes that make you facepalm so hard you give yourself a concussion, the kind of blunders that make you question the very fabric of reality. And yes, the kind of historical fails that, despite their absurdity, actually managed to change the course of history. So buckle up because we're about to embark on a journey through some of the most epic fails in human history. Get ready to laugh, learn, and maybe even cringe a little as we uncover the hilarious, the unbelievable, and the downright dumb mistakes that shape the world we live in. And hey, while you're at it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more entertaining history lessons. Alright, let's kick things off with a bang, or should I say, a hop. Picture this. It's 1807, the height of Napoleon Bonaparte's power. He's conquered most of Europe, he's the Emperor of France, he's basically the biggest badass on the planet. But what strikes fear into the heart of this mighty conqueror? What sends shivers down his spine and makes him flee in terror? A horde of fluffy bunnies. Yes, you heard that right, rabbits. You see, Napoleon, like many historical figures with a penchant for power, also had a penchant for hunting. And I'm not talking about stalking a lone deer through the woods for hours on end. I'm talking about those grand, over-the-top hunts that involve hundreds of beaters driving thousands of animals towards a group of waiting, well-armed, and probably slightly bored aristocrats. So, on this particular day, Napoleon decides he wants to go rabbit hunting. Simple enough, right? Except his staff, eager to please their emperor, took the whole grand hunt thing a little too far. They rounded up, not a few dozen, not a few hundred, but somewhere between 3,000 and 20,000 rabbits. I mean, can you imagine? That's like a sea of fluffy tails and twitching noses. They probably needed a team of like 5,000 beaters to round up that many rabbits. And you know what? Napoleon probably signed off on the expense report without even blinking. Napoleon, 20,000 rabbits? Make it happen, Jean-Claude. Anyway, back to the story. So they've got this ridiculous number of rabbits all penned up, ready for Napoleon to, do his emperor thing and demonstrate his hunting prowess. The cage is opened, the rabbits come pouring out, and nothing, they don't run away. Instead, this massive, fluffy army of bunnies does the unthinkable. They charge, straight at Napoleon. Now, we don't know exactly what was going through the rabbits' minds. Maybe they were tired of being hunted. Maybe they mistook Napoleon for a giant carrot. Maybe they just really, really hated the color of his coat. Whatever the reason, these bunnies were not messing around. Napoleon, the man who stared down armies without flinching, the man who conquered nations, completely loses his cool. He panics, he runs, he flees from the bunny horde in absolute terror, his entourage scattering around him like startled pigeons. The image of this tiny man, this emperor, this conqueror being chased by a swarm of fluffy bunnies is, well, it's hilarious. It's the kind of story that makes you realize that even the most powerful people in the world are still just human. And sometimes, humans get chased by rabbits. It's a reminder that no matter how grand or powerful one might be, the unexpected can always happen. From the ridiculous to the, well, still pretty ridiculous, but also kind of tragic, our next story takes us to Sweden, where King Charles XV, a man known for his military prowess and, let's be honest, his questionable fashion choices, met his end not in the heat of battle but in the itchy embrace of lice. Yes, you heard that right. Lice. Those tiny blood-sucking parasites that have plagued humanity since, well, probably since we lived in caves and wore animal skins. Now, King Charles V wasn't exactly known for his hygiene. He was a warrior king, more comfortable on the battlefield than in a bathtub. He saw personal grooming as a sign of weakness, a distraction from the serious business of war and conquest. He probably thought soap was for, like, philosophers and poets and other people who didn't spend their days covered in mud and gunpowder. Bathing is for the weak.
So, Charles is off fighting the Great Northern War, which, as you might have guessed from the name, was a pretty big deal.
We're talking years of battles, sieges, marches, and countermarches all across Northern Europe. Not exactly the most hygienic of environments, even if you're not a king who thinks bathing is for the weak. As the war drags on, Charles's hygiene, or lack thereof, becomes legendary. He rarely changes his clothes, which, to be fair, were probably pretty ripe to begin with. He seems to have viewed bathing as some sort of elaborate enemy plot to sap his strength. And worst of all, he develops a particular attachment to a heavy, woolen coat. This coat, my friends, becomes legendary and not in a good way. It's described by those unfortunate enough to be near it as stiff with dirt, grime, and, you guessed it, lice. We're talking a whole ecosystem of lice living their best lives in the warm, woolly folds of this regal garment.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, a lousy coat is pretty gross, but how does that kill a king? Well, here's where things take a turn for the tragicomically ironic. You see, those lice weren't just content with feasting on the king's blood. They were also carrying a nasty little disease called typhus. Typhus, for those of you lucky enough to have never encountered it, is a fever-inducing, headache-causing, muscle-aching, potentially fatal disease spread by, you guessed it, lice. And it's not exactly a quick and painless way to go. We're talking weeks of misery, delirium, and suffering. So in a cruel twist of fate, King Charles XIV, the warrior king, the man who laughed in the face of danger,
The man who thought bathing was for wimps is brought down by a tiny, blood-sucking parasite and a coat that probably could have walked itself to the laundry pile. The moral of the story? Even kings need to do their laundry, and maybe take a bath every now and then. After all, cleanliness is next to godliness, or at least it might save you from a lousy fate. So remember folks, even the mightiest of kings can be brought low by the tiniest of creatures. Stay clean, stay healthy. Okay, let's move on to a story that proves that even a seemingly small mistake can have massive consequences. Sometimes the tiniest errors can set off a chain reaction that leads to monumental events. We're talking about the typo that literally started a war. Yes, you heard that right, a simple typo. Get ready for the Ems dispatch, a tale of diplomatic blunders, miscommunication, and one very unfortunate grammatical error. This is a story where words were weapons, and a single misstep led to chaos.
It's 1870, and tensions between France and Prussia are higher than a giraffe in a limbo contest. The air was thick with anticipation and unease. Both countries are itching for a fight, each looking for any excuse to throw down and prove their dominance on the European stage. The atmosphere was electric, and everyone knew it wouldn't take much to ignite the powder keg. Enter the Ems dispatch, a seemingly innocuous message between the King of Prussia and the French ambassador. It was supposed to be a routine diplomatic exchange.
The dispatch itself was about a relatively minor succession crisis in Spain, but its wording, or rather its mistranslation and subsequent misinterpretation, would have explosive consequences. What should have been a minor issue became a major flashpoint.
Here's the gist. The French ambassador approached the Prussian King Wilhelm at a spa town called Ems, requesting that Prussia never again support a Hohenzollern prince for the Spanish throne. It was a delicate request, handled with care. Wilhelm politely but firmly declined to make such a promise, and that was that. Or at least it should have been. Or so it should have been. But fate had other plans.
Wilhelm, being a reasonable fellow, had a telegram sent to his chancellor, Otto von Bismarck, summarizing the meeting. It was a straightforward summary, meant to keep Bismarck in the loop. Now, Bismarck, a man known for his cunning and his willingness to play fast and loose with the truth, saw an opportunity. He was always on the lookout for ways to advance his agenda. He edited the telegram, shortening it in a way that made the encounter seem much more abrupt and disrespectful on both sides. It was a masterstroke of manipulation.
This edited version, the infamous Ems dispatch, was then released to the press. The media, always hungry for sensational stories, ate it up. The French, reading the doctored telegram, were outraged. They felt humiliated and disrespected. They saw it as a deliberate insult, a slap in the face from Prussia. The public outcry was immediate and intense. The Prussians, meanwhile, felt their honor had been challenged by the French demands. They were equally incensed. And just like that, a minor diplomatic incident, fueled by a misleading telegram and a whole lot of pre-existing tension, spiraled out of control. The situation escalated rapidly.
Within days, France declared war on Prussia, kicking off the Franco-Prussian War. It was a declaration that would change the course of history. This war, my friends, was no joke. It was a brutal conflict that engulfed much of Europe, resulting in hundreds of thousands of casualties and a decisive Prussian victory. The devastation was immense. It's a sobering reminder that even the smallest mistakes can have world-altering consequences. So the next time you're tempted to fire off an angry email or send a passive-aggressive text, remember the Ems dispatch. Think twice before you hit send. Take a breath, reread your words, and maybe, just maybe, you'll avoid accidentally starting an international incident. A moment of reflection can prevent a lifetime of regret. The war also led to the unification of Germany under Prussian leadership, fundamentally reshaping the balance of power in Europe for decades to come. It was a pivotal moment in European history, all because of a poorly worded telegram, a few misplaced words, a dash of diplomatic manipulation, and boom, war. It's a lesson in the power of language and the importance of clarity. Well, there you have it. 3 historical fails, each one more ridiculous and yet more consequential than the last. From Napoleon's bunny-induced panic, to King Charles's fatal aversion to hygiene, to the typo that started a war, these stories remind us that history is anything but boring. So, what have we learned today? That rabbits can be surprisingly terrifying? That personal hygiene is important even for kings? that proofreading your work can literally prevent wars? Yes, yes, and yes. But more importantly, I hope we've learned that history is full of surprises, and that sometimes the most absurd moments can have the most profound impact on the course of human events. Which historical blunder was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and try not to get chased by any rabbits.